Arell, but Arell.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. And this is a special episode because today is Earth Day, and I am excited to bring to you Lindsay Arell to talk to us about sustainable events. And specifically because Earth Day's focus today, or probably for the year, is on single-use plastics. And so I really wanted to bring Lindsay in here to talk about single-use plastics and what she is doing with Honeycomb Strategies. She's the CEO of Honeycomb Strategies, what she's doing to help her clients across the globe really reduce single-use plastics at events. So hello, Lindsay.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And Lindsay and I met when we were on the committee for the Events Industry Council, rewriting the standards for event sustainability, which I think have been rewritten again, right?
Yeah, I think they're in their third iteration. So
Oh, wow. Yeah.
2008, 2012, and now here we are.
Right. Yeah. So we've known each other for a while. So we ran into each other at the Natural Products Expo, underneath your single-use plastic. What
The plastic rainbow?
The plastic rainbow. Yes. So, can you talk about, let's everybody introduce you to everyone that's listening. What do you do? What does Honeycomb Strategies do?
Yeah, thanks. So Honeycomb Strategies, we are sustainability consulting specific for meetings, events, and the live event industry is what we say. So really working closely with event organizers to help really strategize and implement whatever sustainability plans and that they have for their show. And so we're lucky that we usually work with clients for many years and really help them kind of from the early stages of their program development and really helping them build it up over time. We also work really closely. We have a whole team that also works with venues and professional sports teams, so convention centers, stadiums, arenas, theaters, and then some different, like I said, professional sports teams. But being able to understand sustainability from both the venue's perspective and the event organizer perspective really allows us to kind of have those tough conversations of what's realistic, what are the resources that we're seeing on both ends, really helping venues understand these are the expectations that we're seeing from event organizers, and here's how you can meet those goals, like reporting or front of house waste programs, all of those things. And then vice versa, being able to work with our event organizer clients to really let them know some of the key ways to be able to work really effectively with the venues to achieve their goals.
Well, and it just popped into my brain because you said what's realistic, and I was chatting with a event or a venue owner this past week at the IAC conference, and he had a planner come in and say, okay, we want to make sure that everything that you feed us is within like 100-mile radius, and they're like everything. He's like, okay, well, salt and pepper aren't mined here in the UK, so I can't get salt locally,
Yeah.
And then it took a couple of iterations of them talking to realize that you can't do 100% local with all of your food. So yeah,
exactly. So how do you have how do you ask those questions, and then in a way where it's not an automatic no, we can't do that, but like you said, that negotiation to get to a place where the event organizer knows that they have to make some modifications to their expectations of maybe we don't have pineapple or whatever it is. And then same with the food and beverage or whomever that conversation's with. So
So I saw you, and when I was trying to figure out who I wanted to have on the show, I'm like, okay. And I went immediately to my photo, and I saw the plastics rainbow, which is the Natural Products Expo, or as other people deem it, as Expo West. So I know you've been working with them for a couple of years. So can you talk about how what initial steps that you took with them specifically around the single-use plastics
Sure.
and what, because they have it all over their website, and they're talking to
Mhm.
their exhibitors even about who are food manufacturers
Mhm.
about not using plastic.
Exactly. So they're a great show, and I've, like I said, been lucky enough to work with them, I think since 2015. So
Okay.
coming up on 10 years, and they're a great example of, like I mentioned earlier, really starting in one spot and just progressing your program. You over the years, and really kind of understanding what makes the most sense and what is the most material impact. So when I first started working with natural products, they are a food sample show, so there's just a lot of waste is one of those things. And back in 2015 to 2016, 17, 18, a lot of the ways that people would sample was plastic spoons, plastic cups, plastic, that was just what was available, because compostable were still frankly not something that was really affordable, or you couldn't get it in every size or what have you. And then the other real challenge of, if you're going to have something, for compost, then you need to make sure that it's actually being collected as compost and then processed that way. So, but at the same time, the organizers for natural products recognize that that was one of their biggest, opportunities to kind of make their show more sustainable. So, really, one of the things we did was, talking with some of the key exhibitors, and really kind of understanding the show. So for every show, Natural Products does a really intensive back of house waste sort. And so by doing that, someone from our team helps lead that back of house waste sort. And so we're really able to see, okay, what are the biggest, pieces of waste that can't be recycled or composted or whatever. And so with that, then we have that information to say, okay, now here's the different things we want to change. So the show started with really just affecting, their own choices, right? Because that's what you have the most control over. So, eliminating any type of like foam core or plastic water bottles, in any of their show offices, and kind of starting in those places. And then going and we tried looking at small pilots then for the sampling with like aluminum reusable ramekins, and so kind of like seeing how that would work. And we tried it back, I think, for the first time in 2019, I believe, in Baltimore. And then obviously COVID happened, and then there was a lot of issues around reuse after that, just getting pushback and concerns. And so, it really kind of pushed us back again. But then we started, okay, where are the other places we can control? And so looking to find, we then partnered, I think this was our third show, partnering with a company called Our Cup, which that's where we use reusable cups for all of our receptions and concerts, and really kind of building that piece out, because again, that's what we could control. And then partnering with companies for replacing. This year we replaced all of the plastic water bottles in the host hotels, and we replaced those with aluminum water bottles. So it's been an evolution over time, but the goal has stayed the same. And now, there are not a lot exhibitors. They're looking to disallow the use of any type of plastic sampling for moving forward. So it's, but you have to, I think what's really key and what they did really well is you can't ask your exhibitors or, participants to, buy into a program if you're not doing it yourself. And so to really be authentic and credible, they really had to get their, ship in order. And now they can go and show like, okay, what's possible. But the conversation's been happening for a long time and been growing. And I'm just really excited to see where it goes, and really proud of the commitment and that they've shown.
That's awesome. And I'm going to put in the comments, I'm going to put a link to their sustainability page to showcase that, because it says zero waste sampling. So, and it started in one, and just actually for people, for context, and I mean, it's a show of about 80,000 people, 80,000 people over the course of 4 or 5 days.
3 days, yeah.
3 days of sampling.
Over 3.
It's huge. Yeah. And I've been a couple of times, and it's really hard to get to every single aisle of that show, depending on what you're doing. But yeah, so I mean, that's a massive undertaking, and for them to do it on their side first, I mean, because it's such a massive show, then there is that good sampling that they can show, to their exhibitors of what they did.
Exactly.
Now, have you had any other, well, actually, I want to go back to that plastics rainbow real quick. Can you share what I'll find the photo of it and share it. But what was the point of the plastics rainbow? Did you do that any other year?
Yep. So we had it for a few years, and that was really, it was an art installation of, it was a beautiful rainbow made of plastic water bottles that were found in the ocean. And really, it was just to raise awareness around the issue of oceans plastic. And then in connection with that, Natural Products, they donate to the ocean, I think it's the Ocean Conservancy, to every year to kind of help them with the mitigation of ocean plastic. So really eye-catching. I think it was like 40 feet long or something, maybe more. And so, but really had a great story attached to it. And we used it for several years until it was in Philadelphia last year. So Expo East was kind of its last year, and we donated it through the Pennsylvania Convention Center. They have a great donation program, so we were able to work with them to donate it to a local school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then because you mentioned the convention center, and the other one is in Anaheim, how were the Philadelphia Convention Center and the Anaheim Convention Center, what was through your work that you normally do, getting their input and their buy-in, I guess, on participating in this and across the board with Expo as well as other clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really kind of going back to earlier, that how we were saying, it's that conversation. So setting up, hey, these are the goals, that collaboration as early on in the process as possible. So Expo, so they have an East and a West. So or they had actually, now this year, they're not going back to Philadelphia. They have a new show that's called Newtopia that's going to be at the Colorado Convention Center. Oh, okay. But they would, even before the show moved to Philadelphia from Baltimore, that was part of the sustainability, was a big part of that conversation. Here's what we're doing. These are the expectations if we're coming to your venue. And so, just that partnership is really, really important. And, a lot of it's education. And, there was a lot of the things that the Natural Products had to do to support that piece. But I think, looking to Anaheim, I really feel like they were very instrumental in helping to evolve the Anaheim Convention Center, front of house waste program. Really kind of, now they're adding more bins. They're understanding, the opportunity, like the Anaheim Convention Center operators are understanding, what resources they have. So, now they collect visqueen and recycle it. They collect carpet and recycle it. So, by us asking and, kind of working with them and finding some of those local partners and sharing those with them, now they're able to do that just as standard practice for other shows. So I think that's the real opportunity that all of our events have, is when you're approaching it from a space of collaboration, then you really have an opportunity to leave a legacy wherever you are, of how to kind of engage or how to kind of have a more sustainable show. So that's what's really exciting too.
Well, yeah, and that reminds me of a story I read of a planner who reached out to a convention center. I don't remember where it was, and they're like, "Well, no, we don't donate our food after the fact, because we're not going to." And she went out and found the partners in the city to do
Mm-hmm.
that with, to collect the food for them. And now that convention center has partnered with them full time.
Mm-hmm.
So
We
it
do that
really shows
a
that. Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
can, yeah, give some examples of, material donations where, a convention center was like, oh, we can't do that. And it was like, we'll do it for you this first time. And then once they
mhm,
like have that barrier erased, and they're like, oh,
mhm,
okay, it's not that bad. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so I want to go back a little bit, I guess, and
Mhm.
say, okay, what are single-use plastics? I
Mm.
mean, what types do you see? I mean, I know in a food and beverage, on the food and beverage side, I'm thinking the plastic forks and spoons that are in the plastic bag,
Mhm.
but what other items fall under that single-use plastic that you see at
Yeah.
events?
So I would say, single-use plastic, especially for food and beverage, is especially tricky because, you'll hear, oh, well, it's plastic, but at least it can be recycled. But the biggest thing is, it's everything from, like you said, those, just forks and spoons and knives that are plastic to the single-use creamers that are made of plastic to
Okay.
plastic condiment packets, like all of those things, right? And those, there's just so many, especially for convention centers, it has to be single use, it has to be fast. And then
Mhm.
now, especially after COVID, it was like, and now it needs to be completely sanitary, or,
Yeah.
perceived as that. And so then I really saw this big like swing to what I call like the banana wrapped in plastic, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just going so much further. It was going so much further the other way of, and everything was in the name of COVID, so you can't really argue with that, And so it
Right.
was really challenging. But it's the thing about those plastics is one, plastics recycling is all a commodities market, right? So
Okay.
plastic is not a valuable thing to sell. So it needs,
Okay.
like, that's what makes something recyclable. Aluminum, it can be recycled infinitely. It's very valuable. It's a metal, so if you are collecting aluminum separate and recycling it, I believe, it's something like it can be aluminum can that you have, you drink out of and put in recycling can be back on the shelf in like 45 days or something
Oh,
crazy like that.
wow.
Very, very easy to
Wow.
recycle, and it doesn't ever like degrade its value. Whereas plastics kind of have to, even if you do get it recycled, then you have to, like, the next iteration of it, it's going to be less valuable and less valuable. So that's just plastic in general, and not a lot of people
Okay.
want to make things with, there.
Right.
So there's that, and then the other piece is, if it has food and beverage, if it has food on it, then it's not recyclable, because then it's considered contaminated. And then things like the forks, the knives, the
Mhm.
little plastic creamers, those are the things that when they go to a recycling MRF, they'll fall through, kind of the conveyor belt piece. So those things will
Right.
just like never get recycled, even if it's clean, whatever it is. Like, so that's just not going to get recycled. And so those are the things that we're talking about. So instead
Okay.
of, that's where the move to bulk condiments, it becomes
Right.
really important. Or if you're going to have, the move, one of the things that just was crazy to me is, when you have, you go to a reception and it's, a beer can, you pop the beer can and then you pour that into a plastic cup. And so now you have
Mhm.
two things that are, for one, two things that are going
One
into.
beverage. Yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah.
so now, we're seeing a lot of just, our planners are saying, we don't need the cup. We just pop and, there's a term for it, like pop and give it or
Pop and sip
whatever
or
it is.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we, with natural products, again, they're moving towards, do we do canned wines or, like those
Right.
types of things to look at,
Mhm.
okay, what are the ways where we can just eliminate the waste stream first and then look for, alternatives for those single use items.
Well, and I think last week I had the eco-friendly beer drinker out of Massachusetts on the show, and even just kegging it,
Yeah.
right? bringing kegs to a convention center ballroom to me would
exactly.
be store the kegs with the beer in it and use a reusable glass.
Exactly. And that's where I'm really excited about the partnership with our cup, is because now they are, it's a reusable cup, and it's, you put it in a bin just like you would a single use item, but it gets, collected and taken back to their facility and washed and then, brought back. And so we're seeing that a lot I think they use it at the Sphere in Las Vegas, big music
Now,
festival.
is it ROUR or what is that?
No, it's the letter R dot. I think it's world now. So what's cool is, so they started with cups, but now they're starting to do, box lunch containers, all sorts of things. So
all right.
That's kind of what I'm most excited about for like the future of sustainability is, let's skip over, compostable serviceware, even aluminum. Let's like really look to what we can do for reusables.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's I just found it. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. ourworldreuse.com. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's exciting. I mean, because it's well, and in my town we still use styrofoam to go out, and I'm like, no. Can I have
I feel like
else?
It has to be hard to find at these points.
Apparently not. And we're on two rivers, so I would really love to get rid of it. Okay, so what is in discussing all of this too, I already know some of the biggest challenges, but what are the biggest challenges when you're trying to reduce single-use, plastics at large convention centers and sporting arenas?
I think it's just behavior change and systems change, right? Like it's the perception from, I've had this conversation where we're trying to get, reusables, and they're like, but that's just weird. That's gross. And it's like, well, you go to a restaurant and that stuff, you're drinking from
like
a reused cup, like it's, so what's the difference? And so it's kind of like that piece of it. It's the behavior change of, one thing that's interesting, not to go too deep into our cups model, but it's just one that I'm most familiar with is, they also are really want to make sure that the cups are really boring. So it's not something where it's like a cup and you're like, oh, I want to take this back as a souvenir. So they have to like really, the concept of, it's not yours to take, like put it back here and we're going to reuse it. And so like that behavior change from like a, attendee standpoint, and then from operations, just how do you kind of get them to understand, kind of those same types of hurdles and getting their staff trained up. And again, when we were at Natural Products, they have a big concert, and we had stacked all, we had put, the reusable cups behind all the bars, and, we're really kind of monitoring that. And then all of a sudden you see like, just a few people walking around with like plastic cups of wine. We're like, where did that come from? Like, and then we found it was like one bar over in the corner that like ran out of the reusable cups. So then they just started using the plastic cups instead of getting more reusable cups, so it's just that training piece, I think, is one of the biggest.
Yeah. Cause and that would be good because the cup, you can't have glass on a pool party, on a hotel pool deck. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So that's switching that out would be
easy, but
think of where I can use that at an event I'm coming up with. Coming up too.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that because you don't, but keeping that eye out too of how you're doing it and who's bringing in that, that not allowed cup. How are you? One of the things I think a lot of people are talking about is the measurement of this, right? You're like, hey, how do you measure your growth? So when you're looking at, especially single-use plastics, how do you measure the success of it across the board? Yeah. I'm like, oh, we got rid of 10 cups this year, and next year we're going to get rid of 50. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think just measurement in general is just so important to understand, like the success or the challenge, of any of your programs. So that's where we always start working with a client. We'll go in and, our very first thing our first year usually is we'll just come in and we'll do what we call like a baseline assessment. And so it's really us coming in and working with your venues, but to really understand, okay, are you tracking your energy, waste, water, what are we have, probably 40 KPIs that we would like look at when kind of working with an event organizer, but getting that baseline. And then from there, kind of like what we did with, natural products or any of our shows, and we say, okay, what are your biggest opportunities? And, sometimes it's really obvious, like, you can just go to natural products and, waste is an opportunity. Right. And so, and sometimes you're like, wow, I never, realized that, this other show had such a big impact in maybe their like food and beverage choices, like, oh, wow, you don't have a single vegetarian or vegan option, really. And so like just
that drives me bonkers.
Right. And so it's really going and seeing what is happening at that show and then kind of making a plan based on that. But with specific to single-use plastics, we really kind of look at we have our baseline for our waste, and then from there the more programs we implement, then it's not necessarily we will track it by here's total waste divided by number of people, but we really look at, okay, you might not be, the goal is to obviously eliminate waste streams. So we have a goal around that, but also, okay, what are the switches you're making? So if you're going to have, you have to have water available, for attendees, and, then, okay, are we making the switch from the single-use plastics to aluminum, and just kind of measuring where those are. We do get a report from, so another thing we tried again this year was the ramekins for the sampling for one of their like smaller sampling events. And so getting a report back on that, it's very clear how many sampling cups we eliminated and kind of what that impact was. So really just asking and tracking and measuring.
Well, and that takes a team of people. I mean, it's not something one-off. I mean, it's hard enough trying to count the roll-ups when you're doing a buffet of people, right? How many people came through the door, but whatever size your event is, but okay, we had 3 sleeves of plastic cup, little ramekins. We've now switched those to aluminum ones, or reusable
they were all
ones.
Collected, and our partners there are able to say, so give a report of by collecting this many reusable cups, that's equivalent to XYZ environmental impact. Like we're able to know, because we get those numbers right from the food and beverage provider when we're going in, because we have to plan for how many cups do we need to have to service this event. So what would they do? And then, we switch that out. So that's a real number that you're able to, track. And so we have a platform that we use with all of our clients called Hive. So it's kind of our online dashboard where, where we input all of these different metrics, and they're able to track year over year or event over event, or, we work with some event organizers, like the entire portfolio. So they're able to see, here's our, not track by the individual event, but also portfolio wide of all of their impacts.
Cool. Yeah. Cause I mean, and I think corporate ESGs are going to really drive a lot of this, not just necessarily from the venue side, but from the planner side. So, and I think it's starting to trickle down to the planner side of that. So how are you, you mentioned earlier too, it's a touchy conversation to have. Like, what questions do you have? What questions do you ask so that you're not, pushed back on things? And I want to say that planners have to deal with that from their upper management. I mean, if they're really passionate about it and upper management is not, or upper management, whichever it is, but then they've got to go find this venue to do the same thing. Do you have any suggestions on how they manage it from both angles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing is really just ask the question of all of your suppliers. Like, we have sustainability goals. What do you have in place, currently? And what ideas do you have? So it was like start that conversation that way, because I think there's a lot of suppliers that are already doing things if you let them know that you're interested in that as well. I mean, I think the events industry, can sometimes be like a little, oh, we're just going to do everything like we did. Here's the same BEOs from last year. Here's the same room setups from last year, because, planners have, so many events that they have to go. And sometimes it's just easy to do that. And so that's, and then from the supplier side, they're like, okay, like a lot of the things, it's just plug and play. But so it really has to take like a step back and say, hey, we're focusing on sustainability this year. What do you have in place? Like, what are the things that you're offering? What's new? And just let your suppliers know it's something you're interested in. And then, they'll be able to, maybe share options with you that you weren't aware of before, that maybe don't have a cost. I think, the other things, and then going up to your, higher ups, other decision makers, when you're able to present something to them, like, here's these these steps that we want to take. There's not a huge cost implication, or in some cases we might be able to save money, and just kind of making the case there. I think that's a really good, like, very, the first step. And then hopefully you'd be able to, with a little bit more buy-in, kind of expand on those. I will say one thing that Natural Products has been able to do, and some of our other clients have been able to do, is find sponsors.
Okay.
So, how do you find, create a sponsorship opportunity out of your sustainability program? But I think if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you're actually doing something. Like, so when I used to, I managed the sustainability program at the Colorado Convention Center, and years ago we'd have events that would want to come and just like put this waste bin is sponsored by XYZ. And it's like, well, okay, like, well, definitely you can do that, but like, are you going to actually now like put some energy into like recycling these things, and kind of putting some action behind that sponsorship? So that's, I think, really important. But I mean, if that's a great way to amplify your program, make money off of it, and really kind of find some really meaningful partnerships.
Well, and I like that, because if you know your exhibitors well enough, you can find out who's really, into this side of something, food or recycling aluminum or whatever, and partner with them and have them do that, because sometimes there is a cost to it, but you can offset it with still making some money and helping elevate their messaging with what they believe in as well. So
exactly. I would say another great resource, convention and visitors bureaus. Like, they know all the players. So we work really closely with Visit Denver.
You just got them to platinum level. Is that right?
For EIC. And, again, been working with them. I think I've been working with Tiffany and that team since 2008, but, a long time. But I mean, it just shows like they have been dedicated, and they add resources, and they, improve their program. And now, if you go on the Visit Denver website, they have, tools for, they have resources for, where to volunteer at the city if you're a large group. And it's like, you can filter it by, a half day, no cost, walking, we care about kids, like you can, so like those resources, they do every other year, they survey all of the hotels in their, in the area on their sustainability practices. So listed up on their website. Like, these are the hotels that have recycling. These are the hotels that have linen reuse programs.
Cool.
So they have so many resources. They have a green vendor directory. Like, a carbon calculator. Like really, they have just created so many resources for the planner for, specific to the city of Denver, around sustainability, so that, they're there to really kind of help, provide the tools
right
for their planners, which is awesome.
Yeah, because it takes a village. It takes some people. One event planner can't do it all. You need the help, and I think CVBs are a great way to do that. I just put the link into their sustainable events page, Green Meetings in Denver.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, that's good. And that's a beautiful picture of the Denver Convention Center, on that page. What thinking about the attendees of events, have you gotten good feedback, or what kind of feedback have you gotten from attendees that has influenced the sustainability choices and approach to reducing plastics across the board?
It's interesting because obviously there's people that really are passionate about that subject on both sides, right? So, and that's on anything. I've worked for a show where we, we were asking people to take a pledge to eat vegetarian for, one meal during the duration of the show. And this was not natural products, but it was a different show, where then, they had some exhibitors that were really upset about that because that was their product was around beef. And so, you're going to hear about it. When I was in natural products, we met with someone they wanted to meet with us and they're from the plastics industry, really trying to push the fact that plastics aren't bad because they know about this goal. And so, you're going to hear about it from both sides, but overwhelmingly, I would say, the attendees are really supportive of, the sustainability efforts. I think one of the biggest challenges is just getting the word out there of what the show is actually doing, because it's, not always totally obvious, all of the efforts, no matter how much you want to put on their website or, how many different activations you might have on site, there's still, people aren't picking somehow. I don't know how people don't really pick up on all of the things. So, but I think overwhelmingly that's, what they're more and more of the attendees and exhibitors are demanding that of the planners. And I think with looking at millennials and different generations that are coming in, that's the expectation now. It's so
yeah. I'm just thinking of water because, when we go to the jugs that people can refill on, a majority of those are plastic. But, in some convention centers, and I was at one major convention center, and I was surprised that they didn't have the refillable water stations, that are in the wall at the airports. Right. Yeah. So how, and I mean, that's a big cost to implement all of those things into a facility. So how are we, I mean, I guess going to aluminum cans or the box cans of water is an option as you're transitioning, or are you working with venues on implementing those? Because that's also an accessibility thing too.
Absolutely. So, I work with, excuse me, ASM Global. So, which, is the largest, venue management company in the world, over 400 venues worldwide. And so I help lead their sustainability program from the corporate level. And so, they've announced a year ago some pretty aggressive goals around sustainability. So elimination of single-use plastics is one of those goals. And so we sent out how do you, kind of wrap your arms around what's happening at all these venues worldwide. And so, the beginning of this year, we sent out a survey to all of the venues in North America to find out just that, which of our venues have water refill stations, just, as part of, what their water fountains or whatever it is. And these are convention centers and like stadiums and arenas and theaters, but
Okay.
which of them have them? How many do they have? And, like what are the plans for adding more? So we can wrap our head around that. And I think being able to, add more of those. I think the challenge of that is, when I first started having the conversation around, water refill, that would seem like so easy, was water is a big money. Selling bottled water is a big money maker. And so how do you compete with that revenue loss, right? Was the big argument.
True. Yeah.
And so, that's where, kind of having to wrap your head around what that is. The other piece is, for especially, this is more for like stadiums and arenas, but, a lot of stadiums or arenas or concerts, you're not allowed to bring in a refillable water bottle.
Yeah.
So, there are barriers, and you kind of have to pick them off one by one and, kind of change that mindset, or, if it's, the revenue model, because a lot of the ASM Global venues, they manage the venue, but they don't manage the food and beverage. So that's a totally different concept. I don't have any control over that, or influence. It's more just we're trying to have that conversation. So that's where it's like, okay, do we offer the aluminum as an alternative, but then still have the refill opportunities? So yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like going to start, like, let's take my cup. They won't take it with the straw in it, but if I hand it, right? Okay. So when I'm coming through security, just look at my cup, make sure it's empty, right?
Right. Exactly. I know. And so they're starting to do that, see that more and more, but it's, you have to, it's a conversation that you have to have. And then it obviously, goes down rabbit holes inevitably.
Right. I think you've kind of answered this a little bit, but what are some common misconceptions about replacing single-use plastics at events?
I would, I guess the pushback we get sometimes is, definitely cost. Plastic's cheap, right? So any alternative is going to be more expensive. And I guess going to your styrofoam, styrofoam's even cheaper than plastic, but so cost is always a huge one. The idea that, we recycle it, so no big deal, right? Is another one. A lot of times I'll be like, we have, it's supply chain issues, or we have so much stock. We certainly can't, replace that all now. So definitely I've heard like every single, excuse there is, the excuse that it's unsanitary for reuse, or, reuse probably, the other one you see here a lot, even though this has been proven, it's not true. Like the water, it's so intensive on water to water use
to rewash the dishes,
rewash everything, so even though just producing plastic uses a ton of water, and so it's I've heard it all. So again, it's just that I would say the real barrier I can see truly is cost. I do know, because plastic's just so cheap. So how do you then how I try to kind of offset that a little bit is like really saying, okay, let's then look at the whole system. So if you're looking at plastic is cheap to buy, but then you have to dispose of that, and that usually that's very costly because there's no value to plastic. But if you switch to say reuse, then you're not paying those waste hauling fees or those waste disposal fees, right? So like those, all of that cost is really just rolled into the cost of this reuse cup. And, you're not looking at those, but there's that disconnect where people, and usually it's because it's the food and beverage company purchasing the cups, and it's the venue operators that are paying for the hauling or waste service or whatever. So those costs are kind of split. So that's like one. Or say if it's going to be single use aluminum, being able to say, aluminum, you can get about $1,000 a ton for your aluminum. So how do you then, at least, now you're producing, if you go to a fully, everything's aluminum in your venue, you need to renegotiate your contracts with your waste hauler, because all of a sudden you're giving them a very valuable commodity that they can sell. So,
Right.
It's like you really have to look
Interesting.
at
Okay.
whole systems
Yeah.
with
Mhm.
all of these, and getting everyone at the table to really see that.
That's where you come in as a valuable partner. I'm
Yeah,
just
right?
saying. I'm
Exactly.
like, yeah, I mean, because planners have a lot on their plates and they want to accomplish these things, but it's not as cut and dry. And I know that I remember, and this was years ago, that one hotel I was going to in Arizona, they're like, yeah, we were doing our recycling program, but we followed the truck, right? And they took it right to the dump. I mean, and this is like 15, 20 years ago. So they
Yeah.
had to stop it. And so I know that there is still some greenwashing of some sort, but checking through those things. And, um, you know, how do you evaluate and make sure they're actually doing the right thing that they say they're doing?
And that's where, if it were that hauler, I'd say, or that hotel, I'd be like, okay, change your waste haulers, but,
Right. Yeah.
and don't change your program. But,
Right.
yeah, I think you really do have to ask for metrics back. I mean,
Okay.
that's kind of put it in your contracts, put it in your RFPs, then put it in your contracts. And as part of that, have that reporting back
Mm-hmm.
to you, part of that, that what's required. So if you're saying I want a food donation program, then ask for, okay, at the end of the show, I want to know how much food was donated and to where, and get
Mm-hmm.
that from not just the show, or not from the venue or the food and beverage, but I want that, coming from the actual organization,
Right.
so really kind of following it through to, where you're asking for those metrics, is really key as well. And then,
Right.
I worked on a show one time where we did just that, asked for the food donation metrics back. And like, sure enough, they had donated a ton of food. But when we saw how much food was donated, like it was like they donated like, I'm going to totally mess up the number, but it was like 3,000 donuts or something. It was something
Wow.
crazy from like one breakfast. And it was like, there's where that's like, why did we order so many donuts in the first
Right.
place,
Yeah.
right? And because it was like a voodoo donuts thing, and
Yeah.
there's like
Uh-huh.
so many of them. And so it's like, again, it's that they would never have known per se that they had over ordered by that much if they hadn't asked for that metric
Right.
back to see, because otherwise it would have just been in the trash.
And then
But
they were charged for that as
they were
well.
charged for that. Exactly. And
Yeah.
so it's like, then the next time they were able to be like, actually, maybe we should reduce our food counts a little bit. So, it's like, there's just asking for that information is just so
Yeah.
key to like your decision making.
Right. Yeah. Aurora has a good story from the New Orleans Convention Center about
Yeah.
the bagels, right? Like, you don't need to order a bagel for every single person.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And the chef is like, why are you coming to my convention center to eat a bagel? You're in New Orleans, right? Okay. So we're 48 minutes. So what, looking forward, what do you see as the trends for the future of sustainability?
Yeah, I think definitely the conversation is getting much more sophisticated around sustainability overall.
Mhm.
I do, we see a lot of big initiatives coming out around, with um, the net zero initiative.
Mhm.
So people are understanding that, the meetings that they have, yes, we've always known they have an impact, but that there's something you can do about it to kind of lessen that. So I think that that's really exciting. I think in terms of, food and beverage specifically, I am really hoping that we are, I do see more and more shows asking to eliminate single-use plastic. I see the venues recognizing that as well, except for like ASM Global sustainability goals. So that's really exciting also. So moving towards that reuse model is really important. I think people are just, and I'm sure you are way more the expert in this than I am, but just having more like healthy food options as well, and just people often, kind of going to the carbon piece, people often say like there's we can't affect our carbon footprint because of, air travel, which yes, like that is the biggest, piece of your carbon footprint. But there are so many things that you can do from a procurement standpoint to lessen that. So, if you're prioritizing more local foods, that's going to reduce your impact. If you're, reducing the amount of signage that you're putting up in your show, then that's less that's being printed and less that's being shipped. There's so many other things. Right. So I think people seeing the big picture and really focusing on the things that they can control is really exciting. And they're doing that because they're tracking and, all of these things.
Yeah. And I had one venue say to me this week, he's like, I own a venue that people fly to, as a destination. And so I think that's a good point to share it with him, saying, okay, hey, where can we look at everything else you have in-house at your venue that you can do more sustainably to help offset what that is. And even the hotel I was at this week, it was Verizon's The Ridge. Okay. Which is Verizon's private conference center. So they typically don't do outside venues. But I was packing up to leave and I had used the soap in the box, right? And I'm like, just curious. I'm like, what do you do with that soap? Thinking back, 15 years ago. And the woman who I asked was actually the woman who manages that program. She's like, Tracy, we send it to clean the world. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. So I haven't seen him at a show. We were doing a packaging up of items to give to a shelter in town. But I'm like, that's another thing that we could just be also reiterating, Absolutely. Hey, the soaps and your shampoos in your room, anything, they're being sent to clean the world.
I love that. Yeah. I know. I actually haven't thought about Clean the World. I
haven't seen them in forever. They're such a good company. Yeah.
Totally. That's good reminder.
Yeah, I know. Cause they were huge at all of our industry events when they first started out, but I guess they've gotten so good that they don't need to be, but
behind the scenes.
Right. Exactly. But I think it's something that a property could then show too, that, hey, did you know that this is what we do? Right.
You communicate that.
Put their website in there. Okay. So my last final question for you. And it's one that I ask every single person, but, or every single guest. What does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience look like to you? But I really want you to frame it into the single use. Can you frame it around single use plastics or just in general?
Yeah. I guess, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but how do you, just that piece where you can have reusables, looking to, if you're doing the box lunch, I've seen what I'm really, that trend of like the deconstructed box lunch, right? So you're not having everything in there already. You're able to kind of go through and choose like a buffet line, but using something like a reusable box lunch to take with you. I think that's making sure that that everything's labeled, you have options, it's healthy, it's brain food, all of those,
right? Yeah,
all of those things.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for everything you've been doing. How long have you been doing this?
So I first started, I was in the events industry before, but how dare you ask, Tracy? No,
hey, I just had my birthday. I was 56 years old.
So 2007 was when I started my role as the first sustainable programs manager for a convention center in 2007.
Okay, awesome. Just before I started doing what I'm doing in 2010.
Okay.
So, yeah. So we've been at it and we still need to continue doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much. I really appreciate your expertise and your time here today to share. And I think all planners and suppliers have a lot to learn, and it's just one step at a time.
Exactly. No, thank you, Tracy. It's always so fun to talk with you. So thank you.
Likewise. All right. Well, everybody, I am excited to bring to you a farmer on Wednesday of this week, kind of to close out the whole month of sustainability. She is so passionate about making experiences with fresh food, right from farm to table to bar to spa. So her name's Melinda, and I'm so excited to bring to you her on Wednesday at 12 o'clock. So until then, stay safe and eat well. And Lindsay, stay with me for just a second. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks.